ladies and gentlemen, Professor Gouge.
Don't you think I aged really well? Spanish mission in the 1700s. I'm glad you guys are here. I want to promote not only the science of paleontology as a part of Weatherford College now, but also invite anyone who would like to participate in these exercises ongoing semester after semester for years to come. So what I want to do today is kind of give you an idea of the timeline of what happened from the discovery all the way down to where we are today. So you see that this is a kind of a replica of maybe for size as to what size this animal actually was that we had to get out of the ground and safely bring to the college. And I'm going to do this from a lay person's point of view, somebody who's not trained. Now I am a full-fledged geology professor, and I've been around fossils all my professional career. But I have never dug a 20,000-pound animal out of the ground and brought it and knew what to do with it. So, quote from Chuck Knoll here says, pressure is something you feel when you do not know what you're doing. And so you just suck it up and you move forward, and one step at a time. One of the questions you might have is, why buckwheat? Why is he called buckwheat? It should have been something much more sophisticated like Plasticine megafaunus in Parker County, Texas, and excavations thereof leading to exploratory laboratory reconstruction for all peoples of Weatherford, Texas henceforth. But from a lay person, I just called it buckwheat. And buckwheat comes from the wish of the landowners. I gave them the honor of naming their mammoth, and they said buckwheat. So that's where that name comes from. So how it all began was April of 2017. Residents of Parker County reached out to us because there was an accidental discovery of about a 12-inch long segment of what became tusk that was sticking out of their land. They were building in-laws and outlaw homes. So the daughter and her husband and then the parents were building 2 homes north of town. And the initial contact to us was someone who works at the dorm here, knew the family, and brought a bag of bones to us. Well, we were intrigued, obviously. So what was actually sticking out of the ground first was just this one right here. Further excavation then obviously revealed more of what is the tusk in this photo. William Sigler, who is in Houston today on professional development, so he couldn't be here today, and I worked together and collaborated and figured out what we were going to do to be able to successfully do this project. Let me give you a little bit of geology first, and geomorphology. A little bit of background. The mammoth was buried in river gravels from the first or second terrace of the Clear Fork of the Trinity River. Now, Parker County has 2 major rivers that flow through it. The northern part is the Trinity, and the southwestern part is the Brazos. So a terrace is when a river is cutting down through its floodplain and it abandons old floodplains. And so typically, Paleo-Indian camps and archaeological sites are found on these terraces because the older material is actually higher, which is different from the way we usually study geology. Usually the older material is on the bottom. So this could have been a setting of the day, when these animals were roaming around. And this is really what our site looked like. Now this isn't an actual picture of the site for privacy for the landowners, but it was, there's no, you can't tell anything, right? It's not screaming at you, I'm here, come dig me up. Just that 12-inch piece of tusk that was sticking out of the ground. So it was really important for the integrity of the project to get it right. I didn't want to be the one who broke the mammoth. I didn't want to be that girl. And so I didn't want to just wing it. I really needed professional guidance and advice. And so when we started our initial field work, it was just investigatory. It was just investigating what the actual size of this project was going to be. And so initially that same year, I was teaching a mini course in Fort Davis and Big Bend National Park in May. And obviously this is not a picture of Big Bend. The park was on fire and our campsites were closed. And so I had to come up with a plan B. And so I invited my students to work out initially at the Mammoth and try to get an idea of how big this was going to be. And up to this point, all we knew we had were tusks. And so we were focusing around the tusks. Well, they were only out there for about 4 days, and then we did end up going to Fort Davis and Big Bend for a little while with different plans. And we didn't get back to this project until July. But in the meantime, we knew that when we did come back, we would need permission legally to excavate on private property. We knew that there was going to be a timeline involved. They were building homes. And we were considering this just to be a salvage operation, meaning that it wasn't going to be a museum, you know, or a park. It was private property. And so we initially made contact with the director of Waco Mammoth National Monument. But she doesn't like me to use her name, her name, because she's federal, and she says the feds are weird about that. So I left her name out of this, but she was very helpful and continues to be very helpful in guiding us in our procedures. When we finished in May, this is my student Carter Gass, so I created a measurement CG for Carter Gass. So these tusks are 0.82 CGs. This is just a funny picture. But when we left in May, this is what we had. We covered it with a tarp and we left. So meanwhile, the legal paperwork is happening with the lawyers. The Weatherford College attorney drew up a contract between us and the landowners and basically said they'll give us the mammoth, and if we trip on a cord, we won't sue them, and if we break their concrete, they won't sue us. It was just kind of a collaboration effort between us. We signed it, and then we resumed excavation. Our goal was just to get the tusks out as soon as we could, and then to do some initial research about the animal itself. And so more professionals, Don Esker works, actually he's getting his PhD in Baylor, but he used to be in charge of the Waco Mammoth site. He came up and spent a couple of days with us interpreting the bones, or the tusk at this time, and giving us possible age range. He told us it was a Colombian mammoth. Colombian mammoths and woolly mammoths are often mistaken to be the same animal, and they're not. Colombian mammoths are the furry northern cousins of the woolly mammoths are the northern cousins, and Colombian mammoths go all the way down to South America. Colombian meaning Christopher Columbus, meaning the Americas. So we had the largest of all the mammoths, the Colombian mammoth. He was male based on the diameter of his tusks, and full grown, approximately 30 years old. The possible dates were very broad at this time, and I'll get back to that in a minute. He thought that because of the condition of the tusks, they were trashed. I mean, if you left them exposed, they were just going to kind of blow up and fall apart. Because of continual wetting and drying, they were expanding and contracting and peeling like an onion. And so based on their condition, and something called the Behrens-Meyer scale, which is a scale was first initiated when people were studying elephants in Africa, and they were studying the condition of their carcasses, and it's a scale from 1 to 5. And so the larger the number, the more it's just been sitting on the ground. and not protected and buried. So I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then he helped us, he showed us how to get it out of there and bring it to the college with the Plaster Jackets. And I'll show you that in a minute. And there's all the stats on the guy. Adult male, 20,000 pounds, 30 years old, 8-foot long tusks, which I recreated on the table back here. Tried to do an actual size and curvature. Of course, they're one dimension, you know, just that 2-dimension right there. They're just flat on that table. They would have curved up, of course. And then his height and his approximate age, which again is very, very broad at this point. This is just shows the Behrens-Myers scale. He was a 3 based on the condition that there was much weathering that had taken place, and they were not in pristine shape. So we learned how to do plaster jackets, and it's basically like making a piñata. It's covering the surface with plastic and paper towels. The paper towels are wet to keep the plastic in place. And then you dip burlap in plaster and you just wrap it up. You have to do the top, and then you have to dig underneath, and stick some boards in there for reinforcement, and then you have to flip it and do the underside. So this is one of the tusks that we're jacketing here. And this is the process of digging under, providing boards for reinforcement. You have to dig under because you have to wrap the board onto the tusk, and then it acts as a carrying device to get it to the vehicle. So this is an example of flipping it. You take literally a crowbar or something, and you just pop it and roll it and hold your breath. At this point, we only had 2 tusks, but we had some really messy bone debris in one corner of this site that we called roadkill because it looked like something on the side of the road. We didn't know what part of animal it was or anything, or even if it was part of this animal. So more about him in a minute. There's a whole process that I'm going to show you on the board over there with roadkill, where we started with him in the lab, and ultimately where we ended up. We started to find more things. We were like, shoot, we're not going to get out of here really soon. We're going to be here a little while. That's fine. It's only 108. It's July. It's in the sun. We were there every day. We needed help. And so not only did we have more teeth, but we had bones. And so we needed volunteers. So we went from just tusks to about a 32 square meter unit, basically the size of a swimming pool, and dug about 1 meter, 1.5 meters down to retrieve bones. We had many, many volunteers. It started to get media attention, and so different agencies, master naturalists, paleontology society, archaeology society, students from SMU and A&M and UT and UTA were coming and spending a couple of days with us. We had the children of professors that work here come and help us. It was a lot of fun, and it was really exciting because we just kept finding more and more and more of this animal. And so there's the houses going up. In the meantime, we're right next to this house working on this. We have shade, a little bit of shade, but we have to move it all the time. And so that gives you kind of an idea of a typical day in the life of excavating buckwheat. This is showing an example of, it's just like TV. It's simple pick and brush. And being that the bones are even as delicate as the tusk is, we have to be very, very careful and not get over excited and try to brush and clean too much. The dirt at this point is protecting it, so we have to try to not clean it pristine and bring it back in a way that it still kind of looks like a dirt clod. And leave it to my volunteers to get the dirt off. So here is, as we continued excavation, these are of course the two tusks laying in place, in situ, 4 feet long. So we had about half of the original 8-foot long tusk. And this is a crushed skull. So we have his head. We don't know what else we have besides tusk, head, and teeth and jaws right here. And then as you go back, there's the skull. It's just a mess. Back up the unit, the whole swimming pool size unit consists of these stacks of bones. And none of them are recognizable to be any part of any animal. So, but we know they're bone and we know how to test for bone, and I'll show you that in a minute, remind me. And this is just another picture. So we finished, and there's the house, August 26th, the last weekend of August, because we agreed with the landowners that we were not going to just keep working at this. We picked everything up that we found. If we left anything behind, it's there. If there's any saber-toothed tigers or anything, the landowner has promised he'd get a hold of us. So anyway, the site is gone. There's no more site. There's no tour. There's nothing to go to anymore. So before we have 2 tusks, and then after we have this huge pit, which I tried really hard with a shovel to fill in for the guy, but I didn't really get very, very far. He didn't care. The reason he found this in the first place is because he works for landscaper. He works for landscaper, and he was grading an area, and that's how he discovered the tusk. This is kind of just looking like the last day. Well, no, it can't be the last day. There's still bones in the ground, but it's looking at the bones and the distribution and how far it goes. We had some mishaps. I kept losing tools, only to find them in my ponytail. This says the day the canopy tried to kill Lori, but took out the west bone of roadkill instead. I had turned around and a gust of wind had come up, and the canopy went flying and knocked me down on the ground and bruised me up pretty good. So the canopy tried to kill me, but it didn't. So now it's here, and now we start lab prep. And now we have to start over because now we need more help. We decided to unjacket roadkill because it was a mess. It may not even be remotely related to this animal, and we just wanted practice. If we messed up, we messed up. So Tommy Diamond, who works at the Perot Museum, came and spent a couple days with us, and we unjacketed, and he showed us completely from unjacketing to final cleaning and reattachment of how you would do this kind of stuff, just like the Perot Museum does. And so since then, we've had several labs. I run them on Fridays, where people, I have an email list, and people come in and they work on removing the dirt. Removing the dirt is the first part. Once you remove the dirt, you have bones that want to just fall apart. And so we use this solution, which is plastic pellets dissolved in acetone, fingernail polish remover. And so it's like a glue, and as the acetone evaporates, the plastic fills in all the pore spaces and petrifies the bones and makes them really solid and handleable. You can touch them and show them and stuff now. We had to create our own kind of unit of measurement. This was in centimeters of grid, so that when bones fell off, we wanted to photograph and map where it was, so that after it was clean, we could at least try to put this bone back together. So cleaning is one part, and then consolidation and making the bones strong is the other part. We also have all the dirt we're removing. And there's buckets of dirt on the floor in the back of the room that need further investigation. There's microfossils that might indicate an age or a date of how old the mammoth is, or rodent fossils. There's possible tool flakes from Paleo-Indians if they were in contact with this animal. So we keep everything until we're told you don't have to keep it anymore. This is an example of a bone that's been completed. It's clean, it's glossy, it's hard. And so just showing you from start to finish, from a clump of dirt to something that are in these tubs, and I want you to see everything before you go today. Reconstruction consists of taking bones that have fallen apart and using a two-part epoxy, like putty, and putting them back together. We've ever seen, been to a museum and you see a skeleton that's white and black. It's showing the original bone, maybe is the black bone, and then the reconstructed part is the white epoxy, so that they can show you overall the whole animal. So before and then after everything's cleaned off, these same pictures are on the board over there. And then ultimately, before I get to that, I wanted to show you that this is actually roadkill right here. Right here. So make sure you come and look at that. And it's a mess, and you can see where the tractor ran over it and some pieces that are missing. It's a leg bone. I don't know which leg bone. So now we've decided, okay, we're brave. Let's work on one of the tusks. So we removed the jacket of the tusk last fall, and it was already breaking apart. You can see a fracture there, and so we continuously work removing dirt, putting what's called B72, which is that plastic epoxy, and getting down all the way down to actual tusk material. Behind you by the window is the actual tusk we're working on. One section is missing. It's right here, so you come and see this. So the sections that are fractured, we're cleaning them in detail, and then we plan on putting it back together. So I hadn't mentioned archaeology yet, because backing up to when it was first discovered, they didn't call us. They called one of the universities in Oklahoma. I don't remember which one. They said, yeah, we'll come down and look at it. They said, yep, those are tusks. Any Indian sign of evidence of Paleo-Indian or anything? No? Okay, well, we're not interested. So, but we were obviously interested. And so we went along just retrieving bones and not thinking that there's any archaeology. Come to find out, we have a point in situ, in position, at the same level of the bones. And so, by mandate, whether or not this point had anything to do with the death or butchering of this animal, we have to register this as an archaeology site. I think this is probably Weatherford College's only archaeology site. And so it is registered officially with the State Historical Commission in Austin. So yay. So this is the student that found it. Now, it's pretty gnarly. And by the way, before I forget, the Doss Heritage Center has this point on display as, along with one of the teeth and one of the bones. So please go see that. It's really interesting because it's in combination with the Newbury Cabin exhibit there. But anyway, I say pre-Clovis. Now, I'll give you a little background of what that means. Clovis are deemed the earliest Americans at about 12 to 13,500 years old. There are lots of Clovis evidence in Texas and everywhere else. So why pre-Clovis? Well, really hot right now is Michael Collins, working at the Gulf School of Archaeological Research, has the Gulf site in Central Texas. And not only do they have occupation down to Clovis, they have occupation underneath Clovis. And the points look like this. And so one of these points right here is why he called me. My point caught his eye, and he said he wanted to come and help us get a date. for the age of the mammoth. So they're not exactly the same size, but they're close enough. So how would you get a date for this? Don't read all that. It's complicated science stuff. But they do something now with recent discoveries where they get a grain of sand from underneath, and it's been in the dark all this time since it was buried. And they have a way to tell how long ago it saw sun. And that's basically the test, and it's called optically stimulated luminescence. So Mike Collins said he's going to come up and we'll go visit the landowners and get a couple of cores and see if we can determine the age of that sediment, which would then mean the age of the animal. Another person reached out to me in Colorado for some actual carbon-14 dating for collagen, and I have yet to produce any kind of samples that I can send him. And I've kind of dropped the dating thing for the time being as I clean, and this is such a long process. And I'm constantly, as I do these presentations, inviting anybody, grad student or otherwise, to take this on. It's a provocative project, possibly, that could get you your PhD, to handle the dating of this animal or any other component of this particular project. We have more evidence. We have cut marks on some of the bones, and I'll show you those when you look at the actual specimens later. So that's 2 lines of evidence. We also have stacking. No wonder the bones don't make any sense. It's possible, and I'm the largest skeptic, but other sites have made similar finds in that butchering an animal, you stack up your meat. So are these stacked piles of meat? So those 3 lines of evidence, including the point, mandated that we register this as not only a paleontological find, but an archaeological find. So, as I said, there's been lots of media, impromptu tours on the site with people that are driving by or family members. It's been on TV, on the paper, in the news. Hopefully, this person, Louis Frazier, right here, she did a documentary on the mammoth, and she's supposed to submit it to the Sundance Film Festival. So I'm waiting to hear from her. It was supposed to be last fall. So goals. A display, obviously. We would like to have some kind of display for at least the tusks. A mural. We've worked with Karen Carr, the artist. We've been in contact with her. She's a Fort Worth native. She's in New Mexico or Arizona now, but I've been in contact with her lab. Not only has she given us permission to use her mural, she's also agreed, I have yet to talk to them about this, but I've reached out to them that we might be creating some animation with some of her art that we could put together, like a day in the life of Buckwheat or something. That's Karen Carr. And so we have questions to answer still, how old he is, and is there, enough of substantial evidence to deem it an actual Paleo-Indian encounter. This is just a plug for the Doss Heritage Center. The cabin is no longer there. It's behind the Doss Heritage Center. They've just taken off the panels of the aluminum siding, and you can see the logs. In April 11th, they're doing a fundraiser with a band and dinner to raise money to reconstruct these cabins. So I hope to see you guys out there for that. This is just an example of some of the cabin artifacts, musket balls, a button from the coat of a Confederate soldier, children's toys. And then this is not even complete anymore, but the list of everyone who's helped me get to where I am with this project. So anyway, that's it. So. Before I go to any questions, I would like to introduce Ian Garofalo and Courtney Tom. Courtney Tom is my present day student. Ian was my student in 2010. So at one at a time, I'd like to introduce you and have you say something about what you're doing and why you're here. So you took my class in 2010. What did you do with your school since then?
Well, I've actually went on to get not one, but 2 bachelor's degrees. One in biology from Tarleton and another in geology. I finally came back around to geology from Fort Hays State University up in Kansas. And just in those years since I took her classes, I've just been continuing slowly but surely down the paleontology path. And now, I've been working on this, which is why I'm working on this mammoth now, because I have education, but I want more experience, because I'm trying to go out to graduate school now. But yeah, so this is actually the first fossil preparation project I've ever worked on, and since then I've also started volunteering at the Whiteside Museum over in Seymour, near Wichita Falls, and also at the Perot Museum, which is really an honor. So this was kind of my gateway to the more practical aspects of paleontology. But I've also, but when I was up in Kansas, I started doing research, and I even presented a little research at the meeting of the Kansas Academy of Sciences, which is where I got this t-shirt here. And I'm currently working on a write-up for that. So yeah, but a lot of this just goes back to her classes. It gave me a really great foundation for the future work the work I've been doing since then. So.
Thank you. And what are you doing? Why are you interested in doing this?
Well, I'm still a freshman, but when I found out that you guys had a real mammoth and were actually inviting people to physically work on it, that's an opportunity of a lifetime. That is a one-off thing, and that's an opportunity that I could not refuse. And it's really, really special. It's an honor to work on something this old, and so I wanted to give the animal the respect it deserved, and it's a really, really cool experience.
Thank you, guys. Give them a hand. For any questions you have.
I have a question. So the bones that you refer to as roadkill, is that another mammoth, or do you know?
We don't know. During Reconstruction, you can see that what it looked like in the ground, and then it was in several pieces. As you remove the matrix, the dirt, the bones come out, you clean them individually, but they're wrapped. And then you try to piece it back together. Ultimately, that was pieced together on my kitchen table because Jim Malott was carrying a piece this big to the Doss Heritage Museum, and he dropped it and broke it. So I went, and I said, I'm going to try just to put the whole thing together. So all the bones were cleaned, and so I just worked on it a couple of months at home and put it together. Because of its proximity to the mammoth, it's safe to say that it is a part of the mammoth, but it could be part of another animal. Legal.
Well, did you have regrets that you had to do it so quickly, and did you feel like you left behind?
Every time we moved the unit back into the dirt, we would find more bone. We didn't leave any visual evidence of anything behind. We got it all. If there's anything that was there, from the tusks, it would have gone all the way to the back of this table easily. So we feel like we got everything that was left behind. Now, because he probably laid on the ground and rotted for a couple of years, we only have under half of him. Anyway, and we knew that scavengers would have picked little bones and carried them off. We knew that, if it was in a gravel bar in the river, that floods would have carried smaller material away. So we knew that we wouldn't have a complete animal. So we were actually satisfied with our leaving it and knowing that we got everything that we could.
Well, I was curious, you said you already did the samples for the carved gratings?
No, I haven't done it yet.
Okay, you plan to?
Yes.
So are we also planning to do some molecular or analysis kind of thing, or like which animal is this versus like which species of the mammoth, and like you said, like there'll be like different animal bones. So are you planning to do any molecular?
Go for it. It's not my forte, so anyone who would like to do anything with this, it's an open lab. It's open for any kind of research and study. Absolutely.
So we do not have like the concrete, the age yet.
No, we don't.
We have not.
No, we don't. Because of the shape of the point and how it matches Pre-Clovis point, which is now, throw that textbook out, because those are not the first Indian, Native Americans, and we're getting to be a part of that, rewriting that textbook, if that's the case. So it's possibly 16 to 18,000 years old. If the point has anything to do with it, we can narrow it down to that.
You referred earlier in your presentation about a test to determine whether it was bone or not.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. So a lot of little fragments were scattered all over, and we learned to recognize bone because, first of all, and I want you to pick this up and handle it and look at it. It's not fossilized. It's desiccated actual bone material. And it's because of that, it's very thick. It's dried up. All the material's been dried out of it. So to test for bone, you do the following.
Oh my.
It sticks to your tongue.
How many times has this been on my
You can test it. You can test it.
How does it taste? What?
Test.
How does it taste?
Yeah, it tastes.
Gritty. But we have material, we have oyster shells, we have dirt clods. They don't do that. Bone will adhere to your tongue. So
Any
just
kind of bone?
any kind of old dried up bone will stick to your tongue.
What about teeth?
Not, well, I don't know, I don't think so. This is the tusk right here. And geologists put stuff in their mouth all the time, so I don't really.
I didn't know that.
So often in Parker County, when you're digging around, you'll find fossilized burrows that resemble very closely these tusks. So would they not stick to your tongue, a section of the fossilized burrow?
No,
Okay.
because of the matrix or the dirt is composed of different material.
Sure.
So silica and sand doesn't have that particular property. But basically this is calcium left over from a skeletal material, and because it's porous, it's just really wicking the moisture off of your tongue, and that causes the adherence. Anyone else? I do. Thank you. Oh, yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
no, I just want to say, I really appreciate letting people come out. Because remember, I brought my grandson out.
Yes.
He still talks about it.
Well, he needs to come back.
I mean, that was such a, he's already been back for a bit. They were all wrapped up at that point.
Mhm.
So now they're exposed, so I can really do that.
Mhm.
Like,
He can't work yet because I want him older.
He's not new, he's in 10.
Well,
Oh, for this.
for this, we have chemicals and stuff in here, so I want like
Are you
18
in-
and up.
Okay.
But you can tour like this.
You do pretty good, he loves it.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. Feel free to get up and look around. The tusk at the back, there's tusk up here, there's bone up here, the finished bone.